Maggot, a horror story told in serial form. Part 3. Spring break 1973. Friday night / Saturday morning. We decided to get away by following a zigzag course through the side streets until we could regain the safety of the Lakeshore Road. All the streets we chose offered good hiding places behind hedges and parked cars, so we figured we were relatively safe. Wrong. But turning onto Dunn, we practically stumbled into Old Gooley. Uncle Fester was near the intersection with Lakeshore, standing right in the middle of the road and completely blocking the way. Luckily, he was facing away from us. I was totally flummoxed and probably would have stayed there all night, open-mouthed like some two-legged carp, but Bag dragged me back around the corner to start doubling back the way we had come. But not before I had noticed, even at a distance, that Uncle Fester's clothes appeared completely dry. Totally dry. We reached Lakeshore Road by walking through the back door of the Halton Hotel, dancing past the bouncers in the bar, and exiting through the main entrance and onto the main drag, no longer trying to hide. We were silent for a moment. Then I finally exploded. Where the hell did he come from? Maybe he didn't get in the car after all. Did he know we were there? Don't jump to conclusions. We began instinctively heading towards Horny Tim's to mentally regroup, but we had only gone a block east when the black Buick came towards us in the westbound lane. It pulled a U-turn and headed back towards us, slowing down as if it was about to stop. Don't look at it, I muttered through clenched teeth. It'll look suspicious if we don't, Bag answered quietly. He turned to look at the car, which had drawn up next to us, and swatted me on the arm to get me to look too. And I did. It was a beautiful car. Long, black, four-door, with the distinctive Buick grille, like a wide mouth grimacing in pain, all in shiny chrome. It had white-wall tires and hubcaps with Buick emblazoned on them, as well as the classic bomb sight hood ornament. I bet that's a Buick, Bag said. Instead of saying, duh, I agreed rather mechanically, as I was seizing the opportunity to stare and try and catch a look at the driver without being too obvious. The man behind the wheel was hard to see, clearly. I caught a glimpse, but before I could get a lock on his features, he put the Buick into gear and drove off down Lakeshore Road. Did you get a look at the driver? I said out of the side of my mouth. Not really, but at least I wasn't obviously staring at him. Well, you're the one that told me to look. Look, not making oil painting. Anyway, I got his plate. We both memorized the number. No one we knew was at Tim's when we arrived. In fact, the place was entirely deserted, which was very strange. At this time on a Friday night, the joint was usually packed. The only other living soul was a woman behind the counter, an old Bag I had never seen before. We grabbed one of the window tables that commanded a view of Trafalgar as far down as the nearby intersection with Lakeshore. I knew it was a stupid question when I asked, but I asked it anyways. What's going on? Bag was about to crack wise, but stopped himself. What he did say was, "You saw exactly what I saw." Yeah, and you know what? What? I'm shit scared. I'm not. What? This is turning out better than I ever could have anticipated. Bag's always florid face was even more flush with his obvious enjoyment of the situation. A real mystery, and our first suspect, too. This is what happens when you hang around with mentally ill people, I told myself. What I said was, I asked you before, do you think they knew we were in the park? I don't know. The guy in the Buick saw us and decided to check us out. But I think they'd be interested in anyone walking around. I mean, it's not exactly a balmy night, eh? Balmy? Barmy is more like it. I think they're up to something. You think? Don't you want to find out? He asked. No, I don't. And I didn't. With the old doll away, I had been looking forward to a quiet week of self-indulgence. Smoking, eating what I wanted, having a few adult pops, and maybe even getting laid. All right, fantasizing about getting laid. Instead, I was in a cold sweat on a tempestuous night in March. But we know about this now, Bag said simply, and we have to find out, if we can, what's happening. We don't have a choice. There is no alternative. And, much as I hated to admit it, I figured he was right. We sat in awkward silence for several minutes, during which time I kept glancing out the window into the night, on guard for either the mysterious black Buick or the ghoulish Uncle Fester. But then it occurred to me that if we could see them, they could see us. Sitting where we were was like sitting in a fishbowl. When I finally spoke, I said, "We're kind of a target sitting here like this. We should probably see if we can pick them up again, but..." "What?" "It's getting late." "Damn right." I just wanted to go home. I no longer knew if we were the ones hunting or the ones being hunted. We left shortly after that, heading down Lakeshore Road. It made us more visible, but it was brightly lit, which we figured would give us some protection. The wind had died down, but the night was now just cold, with a damp chill that seemed to creep into your bones and stay there. We walked in silence, as if we didn't want to draw attention to ourselves by talking, and I didn't even bother to smoke. No one was about. Strange for a Friday evening, when the beer parlors did a roaring trade. And there were few cars on the wet roads. We also had a plan. When we reached the plaza in front of the Centennial Library, we cut across diagonally, as if we were heading for the path leading to the Rebecca Bridge. We were, sort of. When we got to the pool next door, we turned down the staircase at the side of the building and ended up underneath the bridge, where there was a catwalk. When I was a kid, it was always a big thrill to walk along the catwalk under the bridge, rather than over the bridge like a normal person. Tonight we used it to keep out of sight, although we had to tread carefully, as much of the surface was covered with ice. As we passed over the creek, we could still see chunks of thick ice floating in the murky water. What are we going to do if they're there when we come up? The air vent! One of the air vents for the apartment building which abutted the bridge was loose, and you could push it aside to gain access to the underground parking garage, a potential escape route if needed. But it was all clear when we emerged to the street, which was good. I didn't want to spend the first night of spring break hiding out in a parking lot. We agreed to split up, Bag taking Rebecca, me taking Kerr. After all, they couldn't follow both of us. Could they? Heading up Kerr, I kept my eyes wide open and my legs ready to run. There are always too many delinquents hanging around, but tonight was special, as I had to scan ahead, not just for punks hanging out on street corners, but for one special person, or at least one special car. All was quiet. The wind had died down, and a strange smoky haze hung in the still air, though I could smell nothing burning. As far as I could see, I was a solitary pedestrian on the entire street, and on a Friday night, and I was glad at heart when a police cruiser passed me as I made my way along. I refrained from looking over my shoulder. I was afraid I might see a short, squat figure in dark, dry clothes stalking me. I was 3/4 of the way up the street, in front of Kramer's shoe repair, when I heard the throaty sound of the Buick's distinctive V8, and glancing over my shoulder, I saw it pull to the side of the road behind me, idling by the curb. I froze, waiting for I didn't know what. Someone to jump out and come bounding towards me? Or mow me down with gunfire? For an instant, there was deadly silence, and then... Hey, faggot! Schlitzie and Chubb came waddling across the street towards me. Schlitzie, the guy who yelled, was a big, blond tub of guts, a dissipated baby Huey who liked to brag that his old man had been a concentration camp guard during the war. He thought it impressed people. It made me think he was a moron. His shadow, Chubb, was a short, fat slob with a freckled pig's face and curly, horseshit brown hair, and even fewer brain cells. They were so focused on harassing me, they didn't notice the car until they almost collided with it. "Hey, look at that," croaked Chubb. "What the hell kind of car is that?" Schlitzie clamored, making a beeline for the driver's side. As I watched, he rapped his sizable knuckles onto the window while bawling, "Hey, you in there!" And then he screamed. The Buick suddenly roared to life and shot forward, forcing Schlitzie to reel backwards and fall on his big bum in the middle of the road. "What the?" Chubb stood stock still, mouth gaping open like a fish, like a chub, as he stared at the Buick's red tail lights. I didn't hesitate but took off running, cutting across Stewart and into the parking lot of the nearest high-rise, making for the shadows at the very back. A frost fence separated the apartments from the houses on Bartos. I made a quick calculation as to which backyard belonged to Lucy's house, jumped up on the fence, and swung myself over. Which is when I remembered they had a German shepherd. A big German shepherd. To be continued.